Hello, everybody. The title of our presentation is Measuring Political Influence During Elections Using a Deep Learning Approach. The summary of our presentation is organized into five sections. We will begin with an introduction, exploring the evolution of media and social media use in politics. Next, we will review the key contributions that have addressed the theme of influence in social media. In the third section, we will present the proposed approach referred to as Deep Knowledge Scores for measuring influence on social media and its five layers framework. After that, we will proceed to the results and discussion section, where we'll review the key findings of our contribution. We will then engage in a discussion before concluding our presentation by comparing the strengths and weaknesses of the various approaches. Let's start with an introduction. Political events such as elections and referendums around the world are preceded by a crucial phase known as the electoral campaign. During this period, candidates and parties strive to persuade voters by presenting their electoral platforms and highlighting what distinguishes them in comparison to the other candidates. Before 1992, candidates and parties relied on traditional media such as radio, TV, and newspaper to communicate with the public, a period often referred to as old politics with old media. Between 1992 and 1994, this evolved into new politics with old media as candidates began to showcase their private lives in magazines and participate more casually in talk shows. From 1994 to 2006, a new communication channel emerged, which is the Internet. Candidates and parties utilized this platform to stay connected with the electorate through emails and political forums. From 2006 until now, we are witnessing a political revolution driven by the rise of social media, where citizens actively use these platforms to share their opinions about candidates and parties, even after political events have ended. Elected candidates, as well as those who were not elected, stay connected with the citizens to influence public opinion by endorsing or criticizing government reforms. As a result, a new body of research was created, and its purposes are to decipher and study the use of social media by political protagonists and electorate, because social media users express their opinions spontaneously, and to identify the public mood or opinion by putting forward the sentiment analysis of data extracted from social media, because social media are like a microcosm of our societies, and finally to predict the outcome of political events like 2016 US presidential elections and 2016 UK referendum, because the classical methods of polling didn't provide the right prediction. All these contributions have a shortcoming in common, which is they were obsessed by the technical ability to predict the outcomes of political events, and therefore they left out the existence of political and interpersonal communication theories, which surely can bolster such studies and deepen their analysis to achieve better results. The two-step flow theory is one of the most known communication theories, which asserts that people are more influenced by opinion leaders than by the mass media. According to this theory, the role of opinion leaders or influencers is to interpret to their followers the media messages and put them into the context. Several approaches have addressed the issue of influence in social media. Kim and others suggested three metrics to measure the trust relationship between opinion leaders and users in social network marketing campaign. In their contribution, they have extracted the data from opinion websites where users state explicitly whom they trust or they distrust, which is not possible in social media like Twitter. They have used different methods to identify opinion leaders like in degree out degree, and a hybrid measure which combine in and out degrees. Shah and others compared three Twitter measures: mention, retweet, and in degree, which is the number of followers. The study gives us a better understanding of the different role played by users in social media, like the most followed users, the most retweeted users, and the most mentioned users. Wang and others developed a framework called Twitter Rank to identify influential users in Twitter. This framework measured the topical similarity between users and the link structure between them. According to this study, the following relationship is only a form of courtesy between users and not an indication of influence. Anger and others suggested an approach for measuring social networking potential of Twitter users. Three performance indicators were calculated to measure the user influence. The main goal of our contribution is to apply the two-step flow theory to electoral campaigns and identify influential and influenced Twitter users. We chose the 2020 US presidential election as a case study, where we analyze fluctuations in trust and distrust among Twitter users toward these political influencers. Our approach involves initially identifying a first generation of users based on their Twitter activities. Then we use deep knowledge scores to identify a second generation of users who express trust or distrust towards the first generation. Finally, we examine whether this second generation of users can become influential by spreading their trust or distrust to those who interact with them. The major constraints of such studies involve the representativeness of the analyzed data, as Twitter API permits extraction of only 10% of tweets, even if we have the ID of all tweets we intend to study. Additionally, the American electoral campaign spans several months, during which new political actors enter the race and others exit. Similarly, politically engaged users may not remain active throughout the entire campaign. Let's move let's move on to our suggested approach to measure influence among Twitter users. To measure influence among Twitter users during the 2020 US presidential election, we created a five-layer framework as illustrated in Figure 2. The tweets extraction layer utilized the tweets IDS dataset, the twark command, and the Twitter API to extract the corresponding JSON files from Twitter and store them in our development environment hosted in Google Colab. For our study, we specifically collected the tweets from August 2020, a period closely associated with the D-Day election. Throughout this month, numerous decisive events occurred, including Joe Biden announcing Kamala Harris as his running mate and Donald Trump accepting his nomination during the Republican National Convention. The second layer transforms each JSON files into three easily readable CSV files and cleans the tweet's text from new characters, mentions, hashtags, emoji, hyperlinks, and retweet symbols. By utilizing Roberta, a robustly optimized BERT approach, the third layer is designed to determine the sentiments, negative or neutral or positive, expressed by Twitter users who interact with each other through textual communication. BERT and Roberta are based on transformers which were introduced in 2017 and have proven to be more effective than recurrent neural networks and convolutional neural networks. The strength of this the strength of this mechanism lies in its capacity to emphasize relevant features and generate context-aware representations. The influence measurement layer is the core of our approach because it employs deep knowledge scores, which combines, on the one hand, the number of textual interactions between users, and on the other hand, the sentiments expressed by users toward the influential ones. These scores enable us to construct respectively webs of trust and distrust between influential political figures and other Twitter users. The final layer graphically represents our results, enabling us to visualize the evolution of trust and distrust during the studied period. It helps us establish a connection between the increase or decrease in trust or distrust and the topics discussed by influential users. By executing the five layers framework on the selected dataset, we successfully built two primary repositories, one for the Twitter users and another one for tweets. These respective repositories were then used to identify the first generation of users based on their activities like a verified Twitter account, the number of the posted tweets, and the number of likes. The total number of those users who act as influencers is 498, as illustrated in Figure 3. The top 20 of those users consist of prominent figures in the American political landscape. The two candidates competing for the 2020 US presidency were prominently featured in the list and garnered more than 70,000 likes, followed by politicians and activists from the Democratic and Republican parties. While Donald Trump held the first position in this list, the top 20 predominantly members of the Democratic parties. In the following analysis, we specifically chose Joe Biden and Donald Trump not because they were the Democratic and Republican candidates in the 2020 US presidential election, but because they ranked among the top individuals in the first generation of influential users. Joe Biden and Donald Trump served as representative samples for our study, which we then extrapolate to all users within the first generation. The deep knowledge scores were calculated to identify the influenced users who interacted positively toward the influential users' tweets. As seen in Figure 4, Donald Trump was significantly more influential than Joe Biden during the analyzed period, except for 3 days, where Joe Biden managed, albeit to a minimal extent, to influence more users than his Republican counterpart. The number of users who reacted positively to Trump tweets on some days exceeded 10,000 influenced users. Similarly, the deep knowledge scores were calculated to identify distrustful users who reacted negatively to the influential user tweets. Analyzing the evolution of distrustful users for the Republican and Democratic candidates during August 2020, we observed that their tweets generated more distrustful users than influenced users. As shown in Figure 5, Donald Trump tweets generated over than 80,000 distrustful users on the first day of August, with a maximum of around 11 influenced users, while Joe Biden tweets generated around 30,000 distrustful users on August 28, with a maximum of approximately 7,000 influenced users. For connected users who neutrally reply to the influential users' tweets and can be considered as users who were aware of what the influential users had posted but neither trusted or distrusted nor distrusted them, Donald Trump had more connected users than Joe Biden throughout the analyzed period. As shown in Figure 6, Donald Trump managed to reach 35,000 connected users on some days. His part, Joe Biden connected users did not exceed 10,000 users. The experience of the second generation of influenced, distrustful, and connected users as influencer demonstrates that simply having a large number of presumed influential users does not necessarily lead to a significant number of influenced users. As seen in the three figures, the second generation failed to effectively propagate their sentiments, whether trusting, neutral, or distrusting, to subsequent generation of users. This reinforces the idea that political influence is primarily driven by key figures directly involved in the electoral campaign, such as candidates and their running mates. At the end of our analysis, we determined that the effectiveness of an approach aimed at studying influence lies in its ability to address the following key points. Topical similarity ensures that influential users and those who interacted with them share an interest in the same topics within a specific domain. Sentiments analysis, the ability to measure the sentiments expressed by users toward an influential users, positive, neutral, or negative. Influence metrics, the capacity of the approach to propose effective metrics for measuring influence rather than relying solely on standard metrics such as number of followers, retweets, or mentions. Web of trusts or distrusts, the ability to build a web of trust and distrust and assess how influenced, connected, and distrustful users can positively or negatively affect the next generation of users who engage with them. This table summarizes the strengths of our contribution in comparison to key studies that have addressed the theme of influence on social media. Social media are challenging democracy more than ever. Political actors are all using social media during their political campaigns to influence Twitter users, who are somehow the real electors. Contrary to the contribution wherein scientific researchers were developing machine learning and deep learning approach to determine the winner of an election or a referendum, we consider it important to rely on political communication theories before addressing the prediction side. Because of this, we have incorporated the two-step flow theory scheme into our research. This enables us to propose an approach to measure the influence of political protagonists, influential users, and identify, on the one hand, the three categories of Twitter users: distrustful, connected, influenced, who engage with them. On the one hand, we can determine the topics they should consider discussing or avoiding if they aspire to achieve success during an electoral campaign. In our forthcoming contribution, we will enhance our approach by incorporating an additional layer. This new one will facilitate the automatic identification of the most discussed topics among influential users, as well as their influenced or distrustful users. This topic modeling layer will play a crucial role in addressing the prediction side aspects of our study. It will enable us to predict the impact of a tweet published by an influential user on other Twitter users and identify the topics that help the influential user gain more influence among their audience.